Hello and welcome to the Hope Recovery Podcast. I'm your host, Greg Schmalhofer, and this is episode number 33. Thank you so much for joining me on the Hope Recovery Podcast. As a special note, this video episode today is based on the original audio podcast, episode number 33, that was called The 12 Steps of Recovery, a Spiritual Foundation. Today, in this episode, I will look at the 12 steps of recovery and the spiritual foundation of the 12 steps of recovery. So, in some ways, this might be sort of an introduction to the 12 steps of recovery and the spiritual connection to the 12 steps and the 12-step program. The 12 steps of recovery was truly a revolutionary approach to recovery. It was a brand new approach or strategy or program, if you will, to help people finally gain freedom from the terrible bondage of alcoholism. And then eventually the 12-step program was utilized by other recovery groups as well to address many other addictions too. The 12 steps of recovery started in 1935 with a very modest and humble beginning by the founders, most commonly known as Bill W. and Dr. Bob. And what they started eventually became a worldwide fellowship of recovery. The 12-step program had finally given true hope to many, many people to not only be free from the bondage of alcoholism, but to be able to actually live a full and abundant life without alcohol. The 12 steps of recovery are made up of steps or action steps, if you will. These 12 steps are to be performed in sequential order as they each build upon each other, ultimately leading you not only to sobriety, but to a spiritual experience with God. The 12 steps are the foundational action steps or principles used by the two main recovery fellowships, namely Alcoholics Anonymous and Narcotics Anonymous, often referred to as just AA and NA. Alcoholics Anonymous is the largest of the 12-step fellowships, and the second largest is Narcotics Anonymous, which was founded in 1953. NA uses a slightly different version of the 12 steps of recovery from the AA version, but in my view, they really are practically identical. The NA book speaks about their connection to the 12 steps of AA when they say this in the introduction of their book, quote, "The 12 steps of Narcotics Anonymous as adapted from AA are the basis of our recovery program. We have only broadened their perspective. We follow the same path with a single exception. Our identification as addicts is all-inclusive with respect to any mood-changing, mind-altering substance." End quote. The 12 steps of recovery from AA and NA have helped millions of people be successful in recovery. Millions of people are now successfully living a life in recovery with the principles of the 12 steps of recovery. While there are some that prefer other types of support groups that are not 12-step related, it is clear that the 12 steps of recovery have indeed helped many millions of people be successful in recovery, and likely they can help you as well. As I look at the 12 steps, to me it is clear that the 12 steps of recovery are very much about God and about having a spiritual experience with God. In the actual wording of the AA 12 steps, the word God is used 4 times, and words that refer to God another 5 times. Yes, the 12 steps of recovery are very much about God. The 12 steps are included in the main book of AA, which is called the Big Book. And in the Big Book of AA, it references God throughout the book many, many times. In addition, the Big Book of AA will often refer to God in one of 2 ways, as either the God of your understanding or as your higher power. These terms, while somewhat generic, present God and a spiritual experience with God in a very welcoming and open manner, such that many people find this approach to God a more inviting and a sort of neutral place to start in a spiritual journey to find God. For me, I think this was such a wise decision on the part of the AA founders, because it is a very broad and welcoming statement that encourages people to consider finding God in a fresh new way, but yet it still encourages people to seek to find God. And that really is the most important thing, to genuinely seek to find God. Wording like this does not connect AA to any particular faith or church or denomination, but yet absolutely brings God into the conversation of recovery and into the 12 steps of recovery and into the decisions of recovery as well. And with this wording, the 12 steps do it in a very open and welcoming way. To this idea of God and finding God, Bill W. in the Big Book of AA says this from page 12. He says, "My friend suggested what then seemed a novel idea. He said, 'Why don't you choose your own conception of God?' That statement hit me hard, and then later he says, 'It was only a matter of being willing to believe in a power greater than myself. Nothing more was required of me to make my beginning. I saw that growth could start from that point. Upon a foundation of complete willingness, I might build what I saw in my friend. Would I have it? Of course I would. Thus I was convinced that God is concerned with us humans when we want Him enough. At long last, I saw, I felt, I believed. Scales of pride and prejudice fell from my eyes. A new world came into view." Regarding the idea of God and finding God, the NA book says this on page 25. It says, "In Narcotics Anonymous, we decide to turn our will and our lives over to the care of God as we understand Him. This is a giant step. We don't have to be religious. Anyone can take this step. All that is required is willingness. All that is essential is that we open the door to a power greater than ourselves." In many ways, this perspective regarding God and finding God that is presented by both AA and NA are very similar to what the Bible says as well. Jeremiah chapter 29, verses 12 to 14, says this about finding God. It says, "Then you will call on me and come and pray to me, and I will listen to you. You will seek me and find me when you seek me with all your heart. I will be found by you, declares the Lord, and I will bring you back from captivity." End quote. Wherever you are at with your thoughts about God, I encourage you to be open to God. I encourage you to seek to find God, and I believe if you genuinely seek to find God, He will indeed reveal Himself to you. Just as Jesus said in John 14, verse 6, Jesus answered, "I am the way and the truth and the life. No one comes to the Father except through me." The 12 steps of recovery are very much about God and about a spiritual experience with God. A lot has been shared thus far in this podcast, but I think it might also be helpful to better understand how AA and NA integrate God into the 12 steps by simply reading the 12 steps of recovery right now. So here are the 12 steps of recovery as given by Narcotics Anonymous. 1, we admitted that we were powerless over our addiction, that our lives had become unmanageable. And 2, we came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. And 3, we made a decision to turn our will and our lives over to the care of God as we understood Him. And 4, we made a searching and fearless moral inventory of ourselves. 5, we admitted to God, to ourselves, and to another human being the exact nature of our wrongs. And 6, we were entirely ready to have God remove all these defects of character. 7, we humbly asked Him to remove our shortcomings. Number 8, we made a list of all persons we had harmed and became willing to make amends to them all. Number 9, we made direct amends to such people wherever possible, except when to do so would injure them or others. And number 10, we continued to take personal inventory, and when we were wrong, promptly admitted it. Number 11, we sought through prayer and meditation to improve our conscious contact with God as we understood Him, praying only for knowledge of His will for us and the power to carry that out. And then number 12, having had a spiritual awakening as a result of these steps, we tried to carry this message to addicts and to practice these principles in all our affairs. The 12 steps of recovery of AA and NA have indeed helped many millions of people be successful in recovery. It is a program that has been proven by many, many people living a full and abundant life of recovery, free from the bondage of alcohol or drugs. The 12 steps of recovery actually do work, and finding God and having a spiritual experience with God is a central component of this program of recovery. I encourage you to consider the 12 steps of recovery for yourself, and to also consider bringing God into your life, and to begin a brand new journey of recovery and even a brand new life with God. That is what I have for you today. Thank you for joining me on the Hope Recovery Podcast, and remember, there is always hope with God. Take care, and God bless you all. That concludes the podcast episode for today. But if I may, let me remind you, if you are interested in more faith-based recovery resources, please see the website at www.HopeRecoveryUs. And if there is any way I can help you or your recovery group or recovery ministry, please feel free to email me at HopeRecoveryUs@gmail.com, and I would be happy to talk with you further. And again, take care, and God bless you all.